It seems like everywhere you turn, people are using Notion to organize their entire work life. But is it really as amazing as everyone says it is? I mean, calling yourself a connected workspace is a pretty bold claim. Let's dive in and see what we find, shall we?
It's a high bar to clear, for sure. On the surface, they have all the usual features you'd expect: notes, wikis, task management. Seems kind of standard at first glance.
Yeah, I was looking at their website earlier and it's like, okay, docs, spreadsheets, yeah, I've seen it all before. But then I got to this whole AI section and things got really interesting.
Right. It's not just that they've tacked on AI features, they're really trying to bake it into the core of how you work in Notion.
Like that AI writer thing.
Yeah.
Tell me that it's as cool as it sounds.
Okay, picture this. You're a salesperson, right? And you get a last-minute request for a proposal from a VIP client. We're talking high stakes, big expectations.
Oh, I can feel the stress already. Deadlines looming. All-nighter in your future.
Exactly. So instead of pulling an all-nighter, you turn to Notion's AI writer. You give it a simple prompt, like, draft me a proposal, but here's the catch: I need you to pull in relevant client examples and success metrics specifically for the automotive industry because this client, yeah, they're all about cars.
Okay, that's cool and all, but how does it even know what's relevant? Is it just searching the entire internet for car stuff?
That's the really clever part. Because it's plugged into your entire Notion workspace, it's not just relying on some generic internet search. It's tapping into your own personal knowledge base. All those past proposals, client notes, sales metrics you've meticulously tracked in Notion, the AI can access all of that.
Wait, so it's like having a coworker who's not only read everything I've ever written in Notion, but can also instantly pull out the perfect example at a moment's notice?
Exactly. It's like having an AI assistant who's been quietly observing your work, learning your patterns, and anticipating your needs.
Okay, that's pretty impressive. But does it actually produce something usable, or does it feel like a Frankenstein document cobbled together from random bits and pieces?
I was skeptical too, but it's actually surprisingly good at synthesizing information. It doesn't just regurgitate what it finds, it tailors the proposal to the specific industry, draws on your company's unique knowledge base, and get this, it even cites its sources. Like, it'll actually link back to the original Notion pages where it pulled the information from.
Seriously, no more, where did I see that graph again
Yeah.
moments. That alone is a game changer.
Right. And it's not just for sales proposals. Think reports, creative briefs, blog posts. The possibilities are kind of endless.
So it's like having an AI writing partner who could help you with pretty much any content creation task. That's pretty wild. But while that's super helpful for crafting a compelling narrative, what about all the other stuff we're dealing with constantly? Spreadsheets, meeting notes, all that data overload. Can Notion handle that too?
Oh, absolutely. That's where Notion's AI database features come in. They've basically taken that same AI magic and applied it to how you manage and analyze data within Notion.
So instead of just being a repository for information, it's actually doing something with it. Now we're talking. Give me an example.
Let's take meeting notes, for instance. You know how those transcripts can pile up faster than you can say Zoom fatigue?
Tell me about it. It's like half my life is spent trying to decipher action items buried in paragraphs of meeting jargon.
Right. Wouldn't it be amazing if, like, you could have an assistant who could just zip through those transcripts and pull out the important stuff? Well, now you kind of can. Notion has a feature where the AI will analyze those meeting notes and generate these really concise summaries for you, highlighting the key decisions and takeaways.
Okay, that's huge for busy managers who need to stay in the loop but don't have time to wade through pages and pages of notes. But what about other types of data, like customer feedback surveys? That stuff can be pure gold, but actually extracting meaningful insights from it can feel impossible.
I'm with you there. But this is where Notion's AI gets really interesting. Imagine you've just sent out a big customer survey, and now you're staring at a spreadsheet bursting with responses. And of course, you've got all those valuable but oh so time-consuming open-ended answers to contend with.
Yeah, because that's where the real juicy insights are hiding. But actually going through hundreds of those manually, talk about a recipe for a headache.
Exactly. That's where Notion steps in to save the day. You import those survey results right into a Notion database, and their AI goes to work. It can actually tell you if the overall sentiment is positive, negative, or neutral. They call it sentiment analysis, but it goes even deeper than that. It'll extract key themes from the responses and even suggest concrete actions based on what it finds.
Hold on, so if my feedback form asks something like, how likely are you to recommend Notion to a friend? Right? Their AI can actually tell me how many responses are positive or negative, A and D group similar comments together.
You got it. It's like having a whole market research team at your disposal.
Mhm.
And to make things even easier, it can even generate visual charts and graphs based on all that data so you can easily share those insights with your team.
Okay, I'm not going to lie, this is seriously impressive. But here's the thing that keeps nagging at me. As much as we might want it to, no single tool can realistically be the end-all, be-all for all the information we have to deal with these days. I mean, we're practically drowning in apps. So how does Notion even begin to address that?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And this is where their AI connector comes in. Basically, it acts as a bridge between Notion and all those other tools you rely on, like a universal translator for your work apps.
So it's like that device from Star Trek that lets you understand any language, but for my productivity apps instead of Klingon? That's kind of brilliant. Tell me more.
It's still early days, but right now they have integrations with Slack and Google Workspace. And they're adding more all the time based on what users need.
Okay, the possibilities are already making my head spin. But let's get down to brass tacks here. How would this connector actually play out in a real-world scenario? Say, for a new employee who's still trying to find their footing.
Picture this. A new hire is just getting settled in, right? And they're bombarded with logistical questions like, what's the Wi-Fi password? Where do I find the brand guidelines? All that onboarding stuff.
We've all been there. It's like drinking from a fire hose of information.
Totally. But with Notion and the AI connector, instead of having to constantly ping their new colleagues with questions, they can just type their query directly into Notion.
Okay, so if they need the Wi-Fi password, instead of digging through onboarding documents or searching endlessly through Slack channels,
They just ask Notion, hey, what's the Wi-Fi password? And here's the kicker. It doesn't just search their Notion workspace, it also scours connected platforms like Slack looking for mentions and channel conversations and all that.
wait, you're telling me it can find the Wi-Fi password hiding in a random Slack thread about someone's cat?
You better believe it. We actually got a good chuckle out of that during testing. Turns out the answer to a burning question is often buried in the most unexpected places.
Oh my gosh, I can just imagine the look on my face if I asked for the Wi-Fi password and it pulled up a Slack thread about cat memes. Hilarious, but also incredibly useful. What about information stored in Google Workspace apps like Docs or Slides?
Seamless. Let's say our new employee needs to know more about a big company project. They could ask Notion, hey, what are the key objectives for Project X? And boom, it can pull up the relevant slides and information directly from any linked Google Slides presentation.
Okay, this is next level integration.
Yeah.
It's like it can read my mind and anticipate my questions before I even ask them. But with all this talk about AI and automation, it makes you wonder, what about the human element? Does using Notion with all this tech woven in still feel intuitive, enjoyable?
It's funny you should ask that. I went into this deep dive thinking, okay, all this AI stuff sounds impressive, but is it actually going to make my life easier? Or just add another layer of complexity? But I've got to say, one of the things that really struck me about Notion is how committed they are to making the user experience feel seamless and intuitive, even with all this advanced tech under the hood.
That's reassuring to hear because, let's face it, AI can be a little intimidating, especially for those of us who aren't like coding whiz kids. What about the learning curve? Am I going to spend the next year doing AI boot camp just to wrap my head around the basics?
Honestly, that was one of my initial concerns too. But then I discovered Notion's secret weapon, their user community. And let me
Yeah.
tell you, these are not your average passive forum lurkers. These people are passionate about Notion.
Yeah, I've heard whispers of this legendary Notion community. They seem to love this platform with like a religious fervor.
Right. It's kind of adorable. But on a serious note, they're incredibly active and supportive, constantly creating tutorials, sharing templates, coming up with these insanely clever ways to use Notion that I never would have thought of. So no matter where you're at on your Notion journey, whether you're a total newbie or a seasoned pro, there's a wealth of resources and support available to help you get the most out of it.
It's so nice to know you have that safety net of a community to fall back on. It's like having a team of Notion cheerleaders ready to guide you through any stumbling blocks and celebrate your wins. Speaking of stumbling blocks, was there anything about Notion's approach to AI that really surprised you during your deep dive?
There's this really interesting anecdote that gives you a glimpse into their design philosophy. Apparently, the founders spent a lot of time in Kyoto, Japan, and they were just completely blown away by the Japanese approach to craftsmanship, that attention to detail, the dedication to creating products that are both beautiful and functional. And I think that philosophy really shines through in how they've integrated AI into Notion.
Oh, totally. It's not just about cramming in as many features as possible, right?
Right.
Notion definitely has this certain elegance and simplicity to it. It just feels really well designed and intuitive to use.
Exactly. And I think that's a testament to that underlying philosophy of thoughtful design and user experience. It's less about AI as overlords and more about AI as a helpful sidekick, a seamless extension of your thinking, not a distraction from it.
I love that. So it's not about replacing human ingenuity, but amplifying it, giving us the tools to do our best work, whatever that looks like for us.
You got it. And, that raises some really interesting questions. As AI starts to take on more of those routine information heavy tasks, what happens to the skills that we as humans bring to the table? How do those evolve in an AI-powered world?
It's like AI is giving us permission to reclaim our humanity in the workplace, you know? Less time on autopilot, more time tapping into our creativity or intuition, those uniquely human skills that make us so adaptable and innovative.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And those skills will become even more valuable in this new landscape. We're talking about things like critical thinking, emotional intelligence, complex problem solving, the
Right.
ability to connect seemingly disparate ideas. These are the things that will set us apart in a world where AI can handle the more routine tasks.
So it's not about humans versus AI. It's about humans and AI working together,
Right.
right? Like each playing to our strengths to achieve something bigger than either of us could accomplish alone.
Exactly. And, for anyone listening who's feeling a little apprehensive about all this, remember, you don't have to be an AI expert to start experimenting and finding ways to integrate these tools into your workflow. Start small, play around with Notion's features, see what works for you. Don't be afraid to ask for help.
And remember that incredible Notion community. They've got your back.
Yeah,
So to wrap things up, what are some key takeaways our listeners can walk away with today?
I think the biggest one is this. Notion is no longer just a note-taking app or a project management tool. It's evolving into a truly connected workspace where AI is seamlessly integrated into every aspect of how you work, helping you be more efficient, more creative, and ultimately more fulfilled in your work.
It's like having a brilliant but maybe slightly disorganized friend who's read everything and can pull out the perfect piece of information at a moment's notice.
Yeah.
Except this friend is an AI and they're available 24/7.
I love that. So to sum it all up, embrace the power of AI. Don't be afraid to experiment and see how it can enhance your workflow. And remember, the future of work is not something to be feared, it's something to be shaped.
Beautifully said. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into Notion AI. We hope you've enjoyed exploring these exciting new tools and ideas with us. Until next time, happy creating.